She told her 12-year-old daughter not to press record. But when you're being thrown out of your home with nowhere to go, sometimes shame is a luxury you can't afford. That 3-minute video, the one showing a mother begging and a child crying, reached 100 million people in a single day. And somewhere in a glass tower, a billionaire saw his own eyes staring back at him from a girl's face. The girl he'd paid to never exist. The daughter he'd spent 15 years pretending wasn't his. Himℹ had scrubbed floors for 9 hours straight, and her knees still ached when she climbed the stairs to their third-floor apartment. She smelled like industrial cleaner and desperation, a scent she'd become too familiar with over the past 3 months. The yellow paper taped to the door stopped her cold. Final notice of eviction. Vacate premises by 4 p.m. today. Her hands shook as she tore it down. She'd known this was coming. She'd begged for more time twice already, had promised Mr. Baker she'd have the rent by Friday, had even offered to clean his other properties for free, just to buy another week. But today was Wednesday, and Mr. Baker had run out of patience. "Mom?" Vicky stood in the doorway, backpack still on her shoulders, science fair ribbon pinned to her jacket, first place for a water filtration system she'd built from recycled bottles and coffee filters. Her daughter, her brilliant, beautiful, 12-year-old reason for everything. "Hey baby." Himℹ forced her voice steady. "How was school?" But Vicky's eyes had already found the notice crumpled in her mother's fist. "We have to leave," Vicky said quietly. Not a question, a conclusion. That's how her daughter's mind worked, always 3 steps ahead, always solving problems nobody asked her to solve. "We're going to figure this out," Himℹ whispered, pulling her close. "We always do." Except this time, she had no idea how. Mr. Baker arrived at 3:47 p.m. with 2 men in gray coveralls and a sheriff's deputy who looked uncomfortable. "Miss Hendricks," Baker said, not meeting her eyes. "I need you and your daughter out of the apartment, now." He was a thin man in his 60s, with liver spots on his hands, and a voice that had gone flat from delivering bad news too many times. He wasn't cruel, he was just tired of people who couldn't pay. "Please," Himℹ said, hating the sound of her own begging. "1 more week. I have a new job lined up. I just need—" "You said that last month," Baker gestured to the 2 men. "Start with the living room." That's when Vicky stepped between them. "You don't have to do this," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "We're not bad people. My mom works harder than anyone I know. She's just—" "Vicky, don't." Himℹ touched her daughter's shoulder. But Vicky pulled out her phone. "What are you doing?" Himℹ whispered urgently. "Maybe someone will hear us," Vicky said, her thumb already hovering over the record button. "Maybe someone will care." "Sweetheart, no. Too late." The red dot appeared. Recording. Vicky held the phone steady, pointed at Mr. Baker, at the 2 men already hauling their couch through the door, at the deputy standing silent and useless in the hallway. "My name is Vicky Hendricks," she said into the camera, her voice cracking. "I'm 12 years old. This is my mom, Himℹ. We're being evicted today because we're 3 months behind on rent. My mom works 2 jobs, she's never missed a day. But it's still not enough." The phone turned toward Himℹ, and Himℹ felt her soul crack open. Because her daughter's eyes, those bright, hopeful, heartbreaking eyes, were filming the exact moment Himℹ had failed her. "Now, before we go any further, I need you to understand something. This isn't just a story about eviction or viral videos. This is about the moments when life strips away everything we've built and forces us to choose. Do we hide in shame, or do we let the world see us? If you've ever been that woman, the one who held her head high even when the world tried to make her small, then you're in the right place. Subscribe to this channel, because the stories we tell here honor women who survive, women who fight, women who refuse to disappear. And what happens next? It's going to shake you. By 4:30 p.m., everything they owned sat in trash bags on the sidewalk. Their couch, Vicky's science fair project, the box of photo albums Himℹ had kept from when life still made sense, a lamp with a broken switch, clothes folded in garbage bags because they'd never been able to afford real luggage. Vicky sat on the curb, phone in her lap, staring at the screen. "What are you doing?" Himℹ asked, exhausted beyond words. "Uploading it." "Vicky, no." "Mom, what do we have to lose?" And that question, so simple, so devastating, left Himℹ with no answer at all. Vicky's thumb tapped the screen. Post. That night, they stayed at the New Mercy Women's Shelter on the east side, a place Alicia had once dropped off donations, never imagining she'd one day need a bed there herself. The room smelled like disinfectant and old sadness. 2 twin beds, with sheets washed thin. A single window facing a brick wall. Vicky curled up beside her, phone glowing softly in the dark. How many? Alicia whispered. Views? Yeah. Vicky's voice was small. 43,000. Alicia closed her eyes. 43,000 people had now seen the worst day of her life. Go to sleep, baby. But Vicky was already asleep, the phone still in her hand. By morning, the number had grown. 10 million. By noon, 27 million. By 6 p.m., the video had been shared by news outlets, reposted by celebrities, and featured on every major platform. Heartbreaking. Mother and daughter evicted. 1 2-year-old films their struggle. Viral video exposes housing crisis. Young girl's plea moves millions. Who is Vicky Hendricks? The girl whose eviction video broke the internet. Alicia sat in the shelter's common room, staring at her daughter's phone, feeling like she was watching her life become a spectacle she couldn't control. Vicky sat beside her, knees pulled to her chest. I'm sorry, Mom, she whispered. I just thought maybe someone would help. Alicia pulled her close. You have nothing to be sorry for. But inside, Alicia felt raw and exposed. The whole world was watching them now, and she had no idea what came next. What she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was that at that exact moment, 2,400 miles away in a glass tower that touched the clouds, someone else was watching too. Edward Lamb sat in his corner office on the 47th floor of Lamb Innovations, barely listening as his CFO droned on about quarterly projections. His phone buzzed. A text from his assistant. This is trending everywhere. Thought you should see it. Attached was a link. Edward clicked it absently, expecting another viral moment he'd forget in 5 seconds. The video loaded. A young girl's face filled the screen, tear-streaked, determined, desperate. My name is Vicky Hendricks. I'm 12 years old. This is my mom, Alicia. The camera panned, and Edward's entire world stopped. That face, older, tired, thinner than he remembered, but unmistakable. Alicia, the woman he'd loved 15 years ago, the woman he'd paid to disappear, the woman he'd forced himself to forget because forgetting was easier than facing what he'd done. His eyes snapped back to the girl. The way she bit her bottom lip when she was nervous, the slight fidget with her left hand, the emerald flecks in her brown eyes. He knew those eyes. He saw them every morning in the mirror. Edward's hands began to tremble. The CFO stopped mid-sentence. Sir, are you all right? Edward didn't answer. He watched the video 3 more times. Then he stood, walked to the window, and stared out at the city he'd conquered, the empire he'd built on ambition, ruthlessness, and a single cold decision made 15 years ago. A decision that had just come back to find him. Because the girl in that video, the one begging the world to see her, to care, to help, wasn't just some random child going viral. She was his daughter, and he'd never known she existed. I want you to think about something for a moment. How many of us have made choices we thought were right, only to discover years later they were the biggest mistakes of our lives? Edward's about to face that truth. And if you've ever watched someone realize what they threw away, you know how devastating it can be. Hit that like button if you're feeling this story. Drop a comment telling me if you think he deserves a second chance, because what happens next is going to test everything you believe about forgiveness and redemption. And subscribe, because this story is just beginning. Edward's hand was still shaking when he replayed the video for the 8th time. The conference room had emptied an hour ago. His assistant had stopped knocking. The city lights below blurred as he stared at the frozen frame of Alicia's face. Older, exhausted, but still unmistakably her. 15 years. He'd buried her memory under mergers, acquisitions, board meetings, and carefully constructed walls. He'd convinced himself that what happened between them was a necessary sacrifice, that he'd made the rational choice. But rationality couldn't explain why his chest felt like it was caving in, or why he couldn't stop looking at that girl's eyes. His daughter's eyes. He needed to understand what he'd thrown away. And that meant going back to the beginning, 15 years earlier. Alicia Hendricks had been 22 years old when she walked into Lamb Innovations as a summer intern, all nervous energy and oversized blazer, clutching a portfolio she'd stayed up 3 nights perfecting. She was assigned to the Humanitarian Tech Division, a small department tucked in the back corner that most executives ignored. Her job was supposed to be simple: compile data, fetch coffee, take notes during meetings. But Alicia didn't do simple. Within 2 weeks, she'd redesigned their entire water purification project proposal, caught 3 critical errors in the engineering specs, and presented a cost reduction strategy that saved the department $40,000. Edward noticed. He'd wandered into the department late one Thursday night, following the sound of frustrated muttering, and found her surrounded by blueprints, hair pulled into a messy knot, glasses sliding down her nose. "Those calculations are wrong," she was saying to herself, erasing furiously. "They're not," Edward said from the doorway. She jumped, knocking over her coffee. "Oh my God, Mr. Lamb, I didn't." "They're not wrong," he repeated, stepping closer. "They're just incomplete. You're missing the variable for water pressure in rural elevation." She blinked, then looked back at the blueprints. Then back at him. "You're right," she breathed. He smiled, the first genuine smile he'd allowed himself in months. "I usually am." That's how it started. Late nights solving problems neither of them could walk away from. Conversations that stretched until 3 a.m. The way she challenged his assumptions without fear. The way he listened to her ideas like they mattered. She made him feel human again. He made her feel seen. And somewhere between solving the world's problems and forgetting to go home, they fell. In his office 15 years later, Edward closed his eyes. He'd forgotten how she used to look at him, like he was enough, exactly as he was. He'd never found that again. Back then, their relationship was a secret. His legal team would have had a stroke if they knew the CEO was involved with an intern. But behind locked office doors, and in his penthouse where no one could see, they built something real. Or at least, Alicia thought it was real. Edward had been different then, softer, more open, less consumed by empire building. He told her about his childhood in foster care, about clawing his way out of poverty, about the fear that if he stopped moving forward he'd fall back into nothing. "You're already enough," she'd whispered one night, tracing the tension in his shoulders. "You don't have to prove anything." He'd kissed her forehead. "With you, I almost believe that." Almost. But not enough. When Alicia discovered she was pregnant, she'd been terrified and hopeful in equal measure. She practiced the words for 3 days. Imagined his reaction. Told herself that the man who held her at night, who laughed at her terrible jokes, who looked at her like she hung the stars, that man would choose them. She was so young, so foolishly hopeful. The meeting happened in his office on a Tuesday morning. She'd barely gotten the words out, "Edward, I'm pregnant," before his face changed. The warmth drained. The walls went up. The CEO replaced the man she loved. "How far along?" His voice was clinical. 8 weeks. He walked to his desk, pulled out his checkbook, started writing. "This should cover everything," he said, sliding it across the glass surface. "Medical expenses. Relocation. Whatever you need to handle this quietly." Alicia stared at the check. $250,000. Her hands went numb. "Handle this?" she repeated slowly. "Alicia." He wouldn't meet her eyes. "I'm in the middle of the biggest merger of my career. The board is watching everything I do. If this gets out, you'd have to be a father," she finished, her voice breaking. "I'm 29 years old. I'm building something that could change millions of lives. I can't." He stopped, swallowed. "I can't do this right now." "Right now," she echoed. "When would be a better time, Edward? After your next billion? After you've conquered the world? Don't make this harder than it has to be." She stood, legs shaking, picked up the check, stared at it for one long moment, then tore it in half. "You need to disappear," Edward said quietly, finally looking at her, but his eyes were empty. "Take some time. Start over somewhere else. I'll make sure you have references, connections." "You're asking me to disappear." The words tasted like acid. "I'm asking you to be realistic." Alicia grabbed her bag, walked to the door, stopped with her hand on the handle. "I hope your empire keeps you warm at night," she whispered. She never looked back. Edward opened his eyes in the present, his reflection staring back at him from the dark window. He'd told himself for 15 years that he'd made the rational choice. That Alicia had moved on, found someone else, built a different life. But the girl in that video told a different story. She'd kept their child, raised her alone. And now, they were homeless. While he'd built his empire on the ashes of the family he'd destroyed, the shelter's lobby had become a circus by morning. News vans lined the street. Reporters pressed against the glass doors. Camera flashes erupted every time someone entered or left. Miss Hendricks. Vicky, how does it feel to be viral? Are you accepting donations? Who's helping you now? Alicia held Vicky close as they tried to navigate the crowd, security guards forming a weak barrier. This was a nightmare. They'd gone from invisible to spectacle overnight, and Alicia had no idea how to protect her daughter from the attention that was supposed to help them. A reporter broke through, microphone thrust forward. Alicia, sources say you used to work in tech, is that true? Are there people from your past who might help? Alicia's stomach dropped. No comment, she managed, but her face must have given something away, because the reporter's eyes sharpened. Someone you're hoping will see this? Vicky looked up at her mother, confused. Alicia pushed through without answering. Inside their temporary room, Vicky sat on the bed, scrolling through comments. Mom, people want to send us money, and someone started a GoFundMe. It's already at $60,000. Alicia sank into the chair, overwhelmed. Baby, I don't know if we can accept. There's also this. Vicky turned the phone around. A news headline. Billionaire CEO Edward Lamb responds to viral eviction video. Alicia's blood turned to ice. What does it say? Vicky read aloud. Lamb Innovations announces emergency scholarship fund for children experiencing housing insecurity. First recipient to be named within 48 hours. She looked up, hopeful. Mom, do you think? No, Alicia said too quickly. Because she knew exactly what Edward was doing. He'd seen the video, recognized her, maybe even recognized Vicky. And now he was trying to fix it not out of love, but out of guilt. Or worse, out of a need to control the narrative. Vicky was still reading. When asked about the viral video, Mr. Lamb said, "Every child deserves opportunity and stability. This scholarship is just the beginning." He sounds nice, Vicky said softly. Alicia closed her eyes. If only she knew. The announcement came at 7:42 a.m. the next day. Alicia was pouring watery instant coffee in the shelter's communal kitchen when her phone exploded with notifications. Breaking. Lamb Innovations names first scholarship. Recipient 2-year-old Vicky Hendricks. Her hand froze mid-pour. No. Edward Lamb offers full ride to viral eviction girl. No, no, no. Billionaire CEO responds to housing crisis with Action Awards education, housing, and mentorship to Vicky Hendricks. The coffee mug slipped from her hand and shattered on the linoleum floor. Vicky ran in from the hallway, eyes wide. Mom, did you see? Did you see? Alicia couldn't breathe, because she knew exactly what this was. Edward hadn't created a scholarship program out of compassion. He'd created a trap, a way to pull them into his orbit, a way to control the situation before it spiraled beyond his reach. And the worst part? The world was calling him a hero for it. But how could she say any of that without looking ungrateful? Without exposing secrets that would destroy Vicky? She was trapped, and Edward knew it. Vicky couldn't stop smiling. The Aurora STEM Academy. Mom, do you know what that is? It's one of the best schools in the country. They have an AI lab, a robotics program, and I'd have a full scholarship tuition, housing stipend, everything. She was glowing in a way Alicia hadn't seen since before the eviction, since before the fear took root. How could she take this away from her daughter? How could she accept it, knowing who it came from? Baby, we need to talk about this. About what? Vicky's face fell slightly. You're not saying no, are you? I'm saying we need to be careful. Things that seem too good to be true usually are. Or maybe someone's just trying to help. Vicky's voice carried a defensive edge. Maybe not everyone is out to hurt us. The words landed like a punch. Because Alicia had taught her daughter to be cautious, to trust no one, to expect disappointment. And now that cautiousness was being used against her. I just want you to be safe, Alicia whispered. I want us to be safe too, Vicky said. And this could actually help us. Please, Mom. Can we at least go to the orientation? Alicia looked into her daughter's hopeful eyes, eyes that looked so much like Edward's it made her chest ache, and realized she'd already lost this fight. Okay, she said quietly, we'll go. But she was going armed with every defense she'd built over 12 years. Defenses that were about to be tested in ways she never imagined. Aurora STEM Academy Orientation Day. The campus looked like something out of a dream. Modern glass buildings surrounded by manicured gardens. Students laughing on benches with tablets and textbooks. A massive atrium with a 3-story digital waterfall displaying coding sequences. Vicky pressed her face to the car window, speechless. They'd been sent a car, a sleek black sedan with leather seats, and a driver who called Alicia, ma'am. Even that felt like Edward's doing. A subtle reminder that he could give them comfort they'd never afford on their own. Welcome to Aurora Academy, the driver said, pulling up to the main entrance. Orientation begins in the Grand Hall. Mr. Lamb requested I inform you that he'll be in attendance. Alicia's stomach twisted. Of course he would be. She helped Vicky out of the car, smoothing down her daughter's dress, the nicest thing they owned, bought secondhand 3 years ago and already too short. They climbed the marble steps toward the entrance. And that's when Alicia saw him. Edward Lamb stood at the top of the stairs, hands in his pockets, looking more human than she'd ever seen him. No entourage. No assistants, no carefully managed press appearance. Just him. Salt threaded through his dark hair now. Lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 15 years ago. But still him, still the man who'd once made her believe in futures that didn't exist. Their eyes met, and the world stopped. All the anger, the hurt, the years of struggling alone, it all rushed to the surface. But so did something else. The memory of who he'd been before the fear took him. Before ambition consumed everything else. Before he chose an empire over her. Alicia. He said her name like a prayer. Like an apology. Like he'd been holding it in his mouth for 15 years, and finally had permission to speak it aloud. Vicky looked up at her mother, confused. Mom, you know him? Alicia's throat tightened. Yes, sweetheart, a long time ago. Edward descended the stairs slowly, like he was approaching something fragile. Thank you for coming, he said, voice unsteady. I wasn't sure you would. We almost didn't, Alicia said coldly. He flinched. Deserved that. Vicky stared between them, trying to piece together a puzzle she didn't have all the pieces for. You're Mr. Lamb, she said carefully. The one who created the scholarship. I am. Edward's eyes moved to her face, and something broke behind his expression. And you must be Vicky. How do you know my mom? The question hung in the air like smoke. Alicia stepped forward protectively. We worked together, years ago, before you were born. It wasn't a lie. But it wasn't the truth either. Edward's jaw tightened. He understood the boundary she was drawing. I'd like to speak with your mother privately, Edward said to Vicky gently. If that's okay with you, just for a few minutes. Vicky looked to Alicia, uncertain. Every instinct screamed at Alicia to say no, to grab her daughter's hand and run, to protect her from the man who'd already proven he could destroy them. But running wouldn't make this go away. And maybe, just maybe, she needed to hear what he had to say. It's okay, Alicia told Vicky. Go inside, find the orientation room. I'll meet you there in 10 minutes. Vicky hesitated, then nodded. She walked past Edward, glancing back twice before disappearing through the glass doors. The moment she was gone, Alicia's composure cracked. What are you doing, Edward? Trying to help. You're trying to control the situation. There's a difference. He looked at her, really looked at her, and she saw exhaustion in his eyes. You're right. You're absolutely right. The admission surprised her. Then why the scholarship? Why the public spectacle? Why not just... Because I saw the video, he interrupted, voice breaking. And I saw her. And I couldn't. He stopped. Swallowed hard. I couldn't stay away. Alicia's heart pounded. What are you saying? Edward stepped closer. His hands were shaking. I'm saying I think I know. I think I've known since the moment I saw her face. Don't. Alicia's voice was sharp. Don't say it. She's mine, isn't she? The words hung between them like shattered glass. Alicia wanted to lie. To protect Vicky from the man who'd once paid her to disappear. To keep the secret she'd carried for 12 years. But she was so tired of carrying it alone. Yes, she whispered. Edward's knees nearly buckled. He grabbed the stair railing for support. "Oh God," he breathed. "Oh God, Alicia. You don't get to fall apart now," she said, anger flaring. "You lost that right when you wrote me that check, when you told me to disappear. When you chose your company over, I know." His voice broke. "I know what I did. And I've spent 15 years trying to forget it. Trying to convince myself I made the right choice. But I was wrong. I was so catastrophically wrong." Tears burned Alicia's eyes. "You don't get to fix this with money, Edward. You don't get to swoop in now that it's convenient and play hero." "I'm not trying to be a hero," he said desperately. "I'm trying to." He stopped. "I don't even know what I'm trying to do. I just know I can't walk away. Not again. You already did once. And it's the biggest regret of my life." The raw honesty in his voice made her chest ache. "I don't trust you," Alicia said. "I don't blame you. And I don't know if I can ever forgive you." "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Edward said quietly. "I'm asking for a chance. Not with you, I know I destroyed that. But with her. With Vicky. She's 12 years old, and I've missed everything. Every birthday, every milestone, every moment that mattered." His voice cracked completely. "Please don't make me miss the rest." Alicia stared at him, this powerful man who'd built an empire, who commanded boardrooms, who'd once been untouchable, now standing before her, completely undone. And she realized something terrifying. Part of her wanted to let him in. Not for him, but for Vicky. Because her daughter deserved a father. Deserved stability. Deserved the opportunities Alicia could never provide alone. Even if that father was the man who'd broken her heart. "If you hurt her," Alicia started, "I won't. If you disappoint her, I'll spend the rest of my life making it right. If you walk away again, I won't survive it," Edward whispered. Not twice. The vulnerability in his eyes was so raw, it made her ache. Alicia took a shaky breath. "I need time. To think. To figure out how to do this without destroying her. Whatever you need. And you don't tell her. Not yet. Not until I decide if and when she's ready." Edward nodded. "On your terms, I promise." They stood there in silence. The weight of 15 years pressing between them. Finally, Alicia spoke again. "Don't make me regret this." "I won't." But as they walked back inside, both of them knew the truth. Some promises are easier to make than to keep. And that wanting terrified her more than anything. Because the last time she trusted him, he destroyed her. What would happen if she let him in again? "Here's what I need you to understand. Forgiveness isn't about letting someone off the hook. It's about deciding whether the person standing in front of you today is the same one who hurt you yesterday." Alicia's facing that choice right now. And if you've ever had to decide whether someone deserves a second chance, you know how impossible that decision feels. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's wrestling with their own version of this choice. Because these stories, they're not just entertainment, they're mirrors. And don't forget to subscribe. We're just getting to the part where everything changes. The orientation was everything Vicky had dreamed of, and nothing Alicia could afford to give her. State-of-the-art science labs. Coding classes taught by former Google engineers. A robotics team that competed internationally. Teachers who spoke to students like they were future Nobel laureates, not children to be managed. Vicky's eyes stayed wide the entire tour. And Edward stayed close, not hovering, but present, answering Vicky's endless questions about circuit boards and machine learning with the patience of someone who'd been waiting 12 years for this conversation. Alicia watched from 3 steps behind, her stomach in knots. Because she could see it now, the similarities were unmistakable. The way Vicky tilted her head when she was thinking exactly like Edward. The way she asked 5 follow-up questions before accepting any answer, his relentless curiosity. The way her hands moved when she explained an idea, the same gestures Edward made in every boardroom. They were mirrors of each other. And everyone else was starting to notice too. "Your daughter is extraordinary," one of the teachers said to Alicia during refreshments. "And it's wonderful that Mr. Lamb has taken such a personal interest in her education." Alicia forced a smile. Yes, wonderful. But the word tasted like poison. After orientation ended, Edward approached them in the parking lot. "Can we talk?" he asked Alicia quietly. "Somewhere private?" Vicky was already climbing into the sedan, exhausted and happy. "We've said everything we need to say," Alicia replied. "No, we haven't." Edward's voice carried an urgency that made her pause. "Please, just give me 10 minutes." She wanted to refuse, to draw the line here and protect what remained of her control. But the way he looked at her, desperate and broken and determined all at once, made her hesitate. "Fine. 10 minutes." They walked to the far end of the parking lot, out of earshot. Edward spoke first. "I need to help you, beyond the scholarship." "We don't need your help. You're living in a shelter, Alicia." The words hit like a slap. "We're managing." "You're surviving," he corrected gently. "There's a difference. Let me get you into stable housing, a safe apartment, something temporary while you get back on your feet. So you can control us?" Alicia's voice sharpened. "So we're within reach whenever you decide to play father?" Edward flinched. "So my daughter doesn't have to sleep in a shelter anymore." His daughter, hearing him say it out loud, made it real, in a way that terrified her. "I've raised her for 12 years without you," Alicia said. "We don't need rescuing." "I'm not trying to rescue you. I'm trying to do what I should have done 15 years ago. Take responsibility." "Responsibility?" Alicia laughed bitterly. "You want to write a check and call it responsibility? That's what you did last time, Edward, and it didn't work out so well." He took the hit without defending himself. "You're right," he said quietly. "I can't undo the past, but I can do better now, if you'll let me." "Why should I trust you?" "Because I'm not asking you to trust me for me," Edward said, voice breaking slightly. "I'm asking you to let me give Vicky what she deserves. What you've been trying to give her alone for 12 years. Alicia hated that his words made sense. Hated that pride was the only thing standing between her daughter and stability. Hated that he was right. "I don't want your charity," she whispered. "It's not charity. It's—" He stopped, searched for the right word. "It's penance. Let me do this. Please." Alicia looked back at the sedan where Vicky sat, phone pressed to the window, watching them with curious eyes. "I need to think about it," Alicia said finally. Edward nodded. "That's all I ask." That night at the shelter, Vicky sat cross-legged on her bed, still buzzing with excitement. "Mom, they have a 3D printing lab. An actual 3D printing lab. Do you know what I could build with that?" Alicia smiled despite the weight pressing on her chest. "Tell me." "Prosthetics. Water filtration systems. Housing components for disaster relief. The applications are endless." Vicky's eyes shone. "I could actually help people, Mom, like you've always helped people." The words broke something in Alicia's chest. Because Vicky saw her as someone who helped people even when Alicia couldn't help them both. "Baby, I need to ask you something." Vicky looked up, sensing the shift in tone. "Mr. Lamb offered to help us find an apartment. Temporary housing. Just until we get back on our feet." Vicky's face lit up. "Really?" "I'm thinking about saying no." The light dimmed. "Why?" "Because accepting help from him feels complicated." Complicated how? How could she explain without revealing everything? "He and I have history," Alicia said carefully, "and I don't want to feel like we owe him something." Vicky was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Mom, I know you've done everything for me. I know you've sacrificed everything to keep us together, and I love you for it." Alicia's throat tightened. "But maybe," Vicky continued softly, "just this once, it's okay to let someone help us. I'm tired of seeing you work so hard just to stay afloat. And if Mr. Lamb wants to help, and he's not asking for anything in return, maybe we should let him." The wisdom in her 12-year-old daughter's voice made Alicia want to cry. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." 3 days later, they moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood with good schools nearby. Hardwood floors, natural light, a kitchen with appliances that actually worked, beds with real frames, a bathroom where the water ran hot and the shower didn't leak. Vicky walked through it like she was touring a palace. "Is this really ours?" she breathed. "Temporarily," Alicia reminded her. And herself. Edward had arranged everything. Lease paid 6 months in advance. Furniture delivered. Groceries stocked in the fridge. He'd even left a welcome note on the counter. "This is yours for as long as you need it. No strings, no expectations. Just a place to call home. E." Alicia crumpled the note and threw it away. But that night, when Vicky fell asleep in her own bed for the first time in months, Alicia stood in the doorway and let herself feel something dangerous. Relief. The email arrived 3 hours later. Alicia was unpacking kitchen supplies when her phone buzzed. The subject line made her stomach drop. Action required. Aurora Academy enrollment documentation. She opened it with trembling hands. Dear Miss Hendricks, congratulations on Vicky's acceptance to Aurora STEM Academy. To complete her enrollment and scholarship processing, we require the following within 30 days. 1. Completed family background questionnaire. 2. Home environment assessment. 3. Parent guardian information for both biological parents, or legal documentation explaining absence. 4. Academic and medical records. Please schedule your assessment appointment within the next 30 days. Failure to complete these requirements may result in scholarship delays. Best regards, Aurora Academy Enrollment Office. Alicia read it 3 times. Both biological parents, or legal documentation explaining absence. She had 30 days to decide. Tell Vicky the truth herself, or let a stranger with a clipboard do it for her. 30 days before questions she couldn't dodge. 30 days before everything unraveled. She looked at the date on her phone, day 1 of 30. The clock was ticking. Day 7 of 30. Edward started appearing more frequently after that. Never intrusive, never demanding, just present. He'd show up at Vicky's school science fair and spend an hour examining her latest iteration of the water filtration system, asking questions that made her think deeper. He'd invite them to Lamb Innovation's Innovation Lab on weekends, where Vicky could tinker with equipment most professional engineers never touched. He'd send Alicia texts asking if they needed anything, always respectful, always careful not to overstep. And slowly, terrifyingly, Vicky started to adore him. Day 14 of 30. Did you know Mr. Lamb taught himself to code when he was 9? Vicky said one evening, assembling a circuit board Edward had given her. I didn't, Alicia said, chopping vegetables for dinner. And he grew up in foster care. He said he understands what it's like to feel like you don't belong anywhere. Alicia's knife stilled. He talks to me like I'm smart, Vicky continued. Like my ideas matter. Like I could actually do the things I dream about. You can do those things, Alicia said. You don't need him to tell you that. I know. But it's nice to hear it from someone who's already done it. The words stung more than they should have. Because Alicia had always been enough before. Her encouragement, her belief, her love, it had always been enough. But now Edward was here, offering things she couldn't. Mentorship, resources, a vision of a future Vicky could actually reach. And Alicia was losing her daughter to the man who'd once thrown her away. Day 23 of 30. The breaking point came that afternoon. Edward had taken Vicky to his private lab just for an hour, he'd promised, and they'd been gone for 3. When they finally returned, Vicky was carrying a prototype tablet she'd built herself. Edward hovering behind her with pride radiating from every gesture. Mom, look, Mr. Lamb helped me code an accessibility interface for kids with motor disabilities. It uses eye tracking technology, and, Vicky, can you give us a minute? Alicia interrupted, her voice tight. Vicky's smile faltered. Oh, okay. She disappeared into her bedroom. Alicia turned to Edward, fury barely contained. You said an hour. I know. We lost track of time. I'm sorry. You don't get to do that. Do what? Swoop in and be the hero. Take her to your fancy lab. Give her things I can't afford. Make her look at you like you hung the moon. Edward's face softened. Alicia, she's my daughter. Alicia's voice cracked. I'm the one who's been here. Every fever. Every nightmare. Every disappointment. I'm the one who didn't leave. I know. Then stop making me feel like I'm not enough. The words hung between them, raw and desperate. Edward stepped closer, his voice gentle. You are enough. You've always been enough. She adores you. Everything she is, her kindness, her resilience, her brilliance, that's because of you. Tears burned Alicia's eyes. But she deserves more than just enough, Edward continued quietly. She deserves everything. And I want to help give her that. Not to replace you. Never to replace you. But to support what you've already built. I don't know how to do this, Alicia whispered. I don't know how to let you in without losing her. You won't lose her. She loves you more than anything in this world. I see it every time she talks about you. And what happens when she finds out the truth? Alicia's voice broke. 7 days left. 7 days until she'd have to write it down on official paperwork. 7 days until unknown or absent would be a lie she couldn't take back. When she learns you're her father, when she realizes you paid me to disappear, Edward's face went pale. We'll tell her together. When she's ready. And I'll take responsibility for every mistake I made. Promises are easy, Edward. I know. That's why I'm going to prove it. Every single day. For the rest of my life if I have to. Alicia wanted to believe him. But belief required trust. And trust required time they didn't have. Some secrets are meant to protect. Others are meant to destroy. And the hardest part? Sometimes you don't know which one you're carrying until it's too late. If this story is hitting you differently, if you're seeing pieces of your own life in these choices, then you need to stay with us. Drop a comment and tell me, would you have told the truth sooner? Or would you have kept this secret to protect your child? Subscribe if you haven't already. Because what happens when Vicky finds out will test everything we believe about family, forgiveness, and the cost of the truth. That night, Alicia sat at the kitchen table with the enrollment paperwork spread in front of her. 5 days left. Section 7B stared back at her. Biological father information. Name. Relationship to child. Current involvement. Her pen hovered over the blank lines. She could write, unknown. File it away. Keep the secret a little longer. But the school would ask questions. Vicky would eventually see the form, and the lie would compound. Or, she could write the truth. Edward Lamb. No involvement for 12 years. Recently reconnected. And watch her daughter's world shatter when she saw his name on official paperwork before hearing it from her mother's lips. Alicia closed the folder. 5 days. 5 days to decide how to destroy her daughter's innocence. 5 days to find the words for the impossible. She had no idea which choice would hurt less. She only knew the clock had run out of mercy. Day 27 of 30. Edward couldn't sleep. It was 2:47 a.m., and he sat alone in his home office, staring at the ceiling, haunted by a question that wouldn't let him rest. Had Alicia tried to tell him? He'd replayed that morning 15 years ago 1,000 times. The way she'd stood in his office, trembling, telling him she was pregnant. The clinical coldness with which he'd written that check. The way she'd torn it in half and walked out. But what if there was more? What if she'd tried to reach him after? What if someone had stopped her? He picked up his personal phone, dialed his head of security. Marcus, I need you to pull something for me. Personnel records from 15 years ago. Specifically, anything related to Alicia Hendricks. Communications, exit interviews. Anything she might have left behind. A pause. Sir, those archives are... I don't care if you have to break into storage. I need them. Tonight. Understood. Edward returned to his desk and waited, watching the clock with the obsessive focus of a man who'd built empires on impatience. The files arrived at 3:34 a.m. Marcus appeared at his home office door, holding a weathered manila folder. You're not going to like what's in here, Marcus said quietly. Edward's hands shook as he opened it. Employment termination forms, exit paperwork, standard HR documents. And then, at the bottom, a sealed envelope. Addressed to him, never opened, never delivered. Edward's heart stopped. The envelope was dated 2 weeks after Alicia had left. The handwriting was unmistakably hers. Who intercepted this? Edward's voice was deadly calm. Marcus hesitated. Dawn Mercer. Your executive assistant at the time. There's a note in her file. She flagged it as inappropriate communication and held it pending your approval, but she never brought it to you. Where is Dawn now? Still with the company. VP of Strategic Communications. Edward stared at the envelope for a long moment. Then he tore it open. Edward, I'm writing this because I owe you the truth, even if you don't want to hear it. I'm pregnant. You paid me to disappear, to handle this quietly, and I tore up your check because I couldn't stomach the idea that our child was a problem to be solved with money. Asterisk. But, continuing the complete script, Edward, I'm writing this because I owe you the truth, even if you don't want to hear it. I'm pregnant. You paid me to disappear, to handle this quietly, and I tore up your check because I couldn't stomach the idea that our child was a problem to be solved with money. But I want you to know, I'm not writing this to ask you for anything. I'm not asking you to change your mind. I'm not asking you to give up your company or your future. I'm writing because you have a right to know that I chose differently. I chose to live. I chose our child. And I'm going to give this baby the love and the life you were too afraid to offer. I don't hate you, Edward. I'm just disappointed. Because the man I fell in love with wasn't a coward, but the man who handed me that check and told me to disappear, I don't know who that was. I hope your empire is everything you dreamed it would be. I hope it's worth it. But you should know every time this child smiles, every time they accomplish something amazing, every milestone and every moment of joy, I'll know it could have been ours. And you'll never know what you missed. Alicia. Edward's vision blurred. He read it again, and again. His chest felt like it was caving in. She'd told him. She'd tried to tell him. And Dawn had intercepted it. Decided for him. Decided he didn't deserve to know. Decided that his company mattered more than his child. And he'd been building his empire on a foundation of lies he didn't even know existed. Edward didn't remember standing. Didn't remember driving to the office. Didn't remember taking the elevator to the executive floor. But suddenly, he was there, at 5:13 a.m., pounding on Dawn Mercer's office door. She arrived 20 minutes later, startled to find him waiting. Edward, what's wrong? He held up the printed letter, his hand trembling with barely controlled rage. Tell me you didn't do this. Dawn's face went pale as she recognized the document. Edward, I can't explain. You intercepted a letter telling me I had a child. You made the decision without asking me that I didn't deserve to know. You were in the middle of the biggest merger of your career. You were barely sleeping. The press was watching your every move. I was trying to protect you. From what? Edward's voice echoed through the empty hallway. From my own daughter? From the truth? Dawn's composure cracked. From making a mistake that would have cost you everything you'd worked for. I had a daughter, Dawn. For 12 years, I've had a daughter, and you decided I didn't have the right to know. You told Alicia to disappear. Dawn shot back. You paid her to go away. I thought I was honoring your wishes. My wishes were made in fear and stupidity. But that letter would have changed everything. Would it? Dawn challenged. Honestly, Edward, if I'd given you that letter 15 years ago, would you really have chosen her over the merger? Over Lamb Innovations? Over everything you'd built? The question hit him like a physical blow. Because he didn't know. And that uncertainty was the most devastating answer of all. Get out of my building, Edward said quietly. Dawn's eyes widened. Edward, you're done. Consider this your termination. Effective immediately. You can't do this. I just did. Edward walked away, leaving her standing in the hallway, the weight of her decision finally crashing down on both of them. Dawn stood alone in the empty corridor, her career crumbling around her. 15 years of loyalty. 15 years of protecting him from himself. 15 years of making the hard choices he was too weak to make. And this was how he repaid her? By firing her for saving his company? She walked to her office, cleaned out her desk with shaking hands, found the business card she'd kept in her drawer for years, a reporter who'd once promised her that if she ever had a story worth telling, he'd pay top dollar. Dawn pulled out her phone. The text was simple. I have information about Edward Lamb's scholarship recipient. The real story. Interested? The response came in seconds. Very. How much? Dawn stared at her phone. She could destroy him, expose the truth before he controlled the narrative, make him pay for throwing her away like she was nothing. Or she could walk away with her dignity intact. Her finger hovered over the keyboard. Then she pressed send. Meet me tomorrow, and bring a contract. If Edward wanted the truth out, she'd make sure it came out on her terms. Vicky had always been observant. It was one of her gifts, the ability to notice details others missed. The micro-expressions, the hesitations, the things people didn't say. And lately, she'd been noticing something about Edward Lamb. The way he looked at her sometimes, like he was memorizing her face, like he was apologizing for something he couldn't speak aloud, like every moment with her carried the weight of years he'd lost. At first, she thought maybe he was just awkward around kids. But this felt different. This felt personal. It was a Saturday afternoon in the Innovation Lab, their usual weekend ritual. Edward had cleared the space just for her, sending his engineers home early so Vicky could work without interruption. She was soldering a circuit board for her wind turbine project, and Edward stood nearby, pretending to review blueprints but really just watching her work. Mr. Lamb? He looked up. Yes? Vicky set down her soldering iron carefully, turned to face him, and asked the question that had been building for weeks. Why do you look at me like you're apologizing for something? Edward froze. I don't, he started. You do, Vicky interrupted gently, all the time. Like you're sad and sorry and scared all at once, and I don't understand why. Edward's carefully constructed walls began to crumble. Vicky, did you know my mom before? Like, really know her? His throat tightened. Yes. Were you friends? More than friends. Vicky's brilliant mind was already connecting dots, following threads, solving the equation. How much more? Edward closed his eyes. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. Alicia was supposed to be here. They were supposed to tell her together, when she was ready. But Vicky was looking at him with those eyes, his eyes demanding truth. And he couldn't lie to her anymore. Vicky, I think we should wait for your mother. Just tell me. Her voice cracked slightly. Please, whatever it is, just tell me. Edward sat down on the workbench, suddenly exhausted. I loved your mother, he said quietly. 15 years ago, we worked together, and I fell in love with her, in a way I've never loved anyone before or since. Vicky's face paled. What happened? I got scared. I was building my company, and I thought I had to choose between my future and her. So He swallowed hard. I chose wrong. You left her. I sent her away, he corrected, the words tasting like ash. I was a coward. Vicky's hands were shaking. Why are you telling me this? Edward looked at her, this brilliant, beautiful girl who had his stubborn curiosity and his nervous habits and his relentless need to understand everything. Because you asked. And because you deserve the truth. What truth? Edward took a breath that felt like drowning. I'm your father, Vicky. The words hung in the air like broken glass. Vicky's face went white. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Time seemed to stop. Then, what? I'm your father, Edward repeated, his voice breaking. She stood up so fast her chair fell backward. No. Vicky. No, that doesn't, you can't be. Her breathing quickened. Does Mom know? Edward nodded, tears already forming. Yes. She knows you're my father? Yes. And that's when Vicky's world shattered. Then why? Her voice rose, cracking with betrayal. Why didn't you stay? Why weren't you there? Edward's face crumpled. Because I was terrified. Because I thought my company mattered more than anything. Because I made the worst decision of my entire life. You knew about me and you didn't want me? I didn't know. You just said Mom knows. Vicky was crying now, angry tears streaming down her face. Which means she told you, which means you knew, and you still left us. It's not that simple. Yes it is, Vicky shouted. You either wanted to be my dad, or you didn't, and you didn't. Edward dropped to his knees, tears flowing freely now, something he hadn't done in decades, something he'd trained himself never to do. But this was his daughter, and he was watching her heart break because of him. You're right, he choked out. You're absolutely right. I was offered the chance to be your father, and I chose my company instead. I chose money and power and success over you and your mother, and there is no excuse for that. None. Vicky wrapped her arms around herself, trembling. I've spent 12 years wondering why I didn't have a dad, she whispered. 12 years watching other kids with their fathers and wondering what was wrong with me. Why wasn't I enough? Why didn't I deserve one? Nothing is wrong with you. Then why did you leave? Because everything was wrong with me. Edward's voice cracked completely. Because I was broken and scared, and so focused on becoming someone important that I destroyed the only important thing I'd ever had. Vicky stared at him, this powerful man on his knees, sobbing like a child, and she felt nothing. Just a cold, empty betrayal where affection used to be. All this time, she said, her voice hollow. The scholarship. The apartment. The lab visits. You weren't just being nice. You were trying to buy forgiveness. I was trying to be what I should have been from the beginning. You're 12 years too late. The words hit Edward like a physical blow. Vicky grabbed her backpack with shaking hands. Where are you going? Edward asked desperately. Home. To my mom. The parent who actually wanted me. Vicky, please. Don't. Her voice was ice. Don't follow me. Don't call me. Don't pretend you care now when you didn't care then. I do care. If you cared, you would have been there. She walked toward the door, then stopped without turning around. I wish you'd stayed away, she whispered. It hurt less when I didn't know who you were. Then she ran. Edward collapsed onto the floor, his body shaking with sobs he'd buried for 15 years. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a voice whispered what he already knew. He deserved this. Every moment of this pain was justice. Vicky burst through the apartment door 20 minutes later, her face streaked with tears, her entire body trembling. Alicia was folding laundry in the living room. She looked up and immediately knew. Baby, he told me. Alicia's blood turned to ice. Vicky, he told me he's my father. Vicky's voice cracked. And you knew. You've always known. Alicia dropped the laundry, reaching for her daughter. Sweetheart, let me explain. Why didn't you tell me? Vicky sobbed. Why did I have to find out like this? I was trying to protect you. From what? The truth? Alicia pulled her daughter into her arms, even as Vicky tried to pull away. From getting hurt. From the pain of knowing your father chose his company over us. But I got hurt anyway, Vicky cried into her mother's shoulder. I got hurt worse, because I started to like him. I started to think maybe we could be something. And then I find out he's been lying the whole time. He wasn't lying. He just wasn't telling the truth, Vicky finished bitterly. That's the same thing, Mom. Alicia held her daughter tighter, feeling her own tears fall. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought waiting would hurt less. Nothing about this hurts less. They sank to the floor together, mother and daughter, holding each other in the wreckage of secrets finally exposed. And Alicia realized what she'd been too afraid to admit. There was no good time to tell this truth. There was no way to make this hurt less. There was only the aftermath. And somehow, they'd have to survive it. An hour later, Vicky lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling. Her phone buzzed. A text from Edward. I'm so sorry. Please let me explain. Please don't shut me out. She deleted it without responding. Another buzz. You have every right to hate me. But please know, I love you. I've loved you from the moment I saw you in that video. Even before I knew for certain. Delete? Another. I don't expect forgiveness. I just need you to know it was never about you not being enough. You are everything I didn't know I needed. Vicky threw her phone across the room. Because his words didn't change anything. They didn't erase 12 years of absence. They didn't undo the abandonment. They didn't make her whole. And as she curled into herself, crying into her pillow, one thought kept circling. She'd finally found her father. And she wished she hadn't. Edward stood outside Alicia's apartment building at 11:47 p.m., his hand raised to knock, but frozen in place. He'd been standing there for 20 minutes. Because once he knocked, once this conversation started, there would be no taking back what had happened, no undoing the damage, no pretending he hadn't shattered his daughter's world. He knocked. Alicia opened the door 3 seconds later, and the fury on her face could have melted steel. Get inside, she hissed. Before you wake the whole building. He followed her in. The apartment was dark, except for the kitchen light. Vicky's bedroom door was closed. The moment Alicia turned to face him, the storm broke. What the hell were you thinking? Her voice was a harsh whisper, trembling with rage. I told you. I specifically told you not yet. Not from you. And you told her anyway? She asked me directly. So you lie. You deflect. You say, talk to your mother. You don't just drop a bomb like that and destroy her. Edward's composure cracked. She was looking right at me, asking why I looked at her like I was apologizing. And I couldn't lie to her face anymore. So instead you traumatized her? Alicia's hands were shaking. Do you have any idea what she's been like for the past 6 hours? She's been crying in her room. She won't eat. She won't talk to me. She deleted every text you sent. Each word was a knife. I know, Edward said, his voice breaking. I know I destroyed everything. But she deserved the truth. She deserved it gently. She deserved it from both of us, together, when she was ready. Alicia's eyes blazed. But you couldn't wait. You couldn't respect boundaries. You had to unburden yourself, because your guilt was too heavy to carry. That's not. Yes, it is. Alicia exploded. This wasn't about what Vicky needed, this was about what you needed. Permission, absolution, a chance to confess your sins and feel better. Edward staggered back like he'd been struck. Because she was right. Some part of him had needed Vicky to know, needed her to understand why he'd been hovering, why every moment with her felt desperate and precious. He'd been thinking about his own pain, not hers. "You're right," he whispered. "You're absolutely right." Alicia's anger faltered, surprised by his admission. "I've spent 15 years building walls," Edward continued, his voice hollow. "Convincing myself I made the right choice. That success mattered more than love. That empire building justified the cost." He looked at her with red-rimmed eyes. "And then I saw that video. And I saw her. And every wall I built came crashing down because I realized I'd spent 15 years lying to myself. That doesn't give you the right." "I know." Edward's voice cracked. "I know I don't have the right. I didn't earn it. I abandoned you both and I don't deserve forgiveness. But I'm drowning, Alicia. I'm drowning in regret, and I don't know how to fix this." "You can't fix this, Edward. Some things can't be fixed." "Then let me try anyway," he pleaded. "Let me be here now. Let me show up even when it's hard. Let me prove that I'm not the man who wrote you that check anymore." Alicia laughed bitterly. "You think showing up now erases 12 years of absence? You think presence makes up for abandonment? No, but it's better than nothing." "Is it?" Alicia's voice dropped to something dangerous. "Because right now, Vicky is in her room, wondering why her father didn't want her. Wondering what was so wrong with her that you chose a company over her existence. There's nothing wrong with her. Then why did you leave?" The question hung between them like an accusation and a wound. Edward's face crumpled. "Because I was weak. Because I was terrified of failing. Because I grew up in foster care, bouncing between homes, and I convinced myself that success was the only thing that mattered. That if I could just build something big enough, important enough, I'd finally be worth something." Tears streamed down his face now. "I thought love made you vulnerable. I thought family made you weak. I thought I had to sacrifice everything personal to achieve anything professional." His voice broke completely. "And I was so catastrophically wrong that I destroyed the best thing I ever had." Alicia felt her own tears falling. "You didn't just destroy us, Edward. You destroyed her trust, her ability to believe that people stay. And I've spent 12 years trying to teach her that she's worthy of love, and you just confirmed her worst fear in a single conversation. I'll spend the rest of my life making it right." "How?" Alicia demanded. "How do you make this right? Do you have a time machine? Can you go back and choose differently?" "No, but I can choose differently now. It's too late." "It's not," Edward said desperately. "She's 12. She has her whole life ahead of her, and I can be there for it, for graduations and heartbreaks and achievements and failures. I can be the father I should have been from the beginning." "She doesn't want you." The words hit him like bullets. "I know, but maybe someday she will. Maybe if I prove I'm not going anywhere. Maybe if I show her that I've changed. Maybe if I..." "Maybe isn't good enough." Alicia's voice rose. "She needed you to be certain 12 years ago. She needed you to fight for her, and you didn't." Edward sank into a chair, defeated. "I know." Silence filled the apartment. Then, quietly from the hallway, "I heard everything." They both spun around. Vicky stood in the shadows, her face pale and tear-streaked, wearing the oversized shirt she slept in. "Baby," Alicia started. "Is it true?" Vicky asked Edward, her voice small. "That you grew up in foster care?" Edward nodded, unable to speak. "And you were scared of failing?" Another nod. Vicky's face twisted with confusion and pain. "But you're a billionaire. You built one of the most successful companies in the world. How could you be scared of anything?" Edward's voice was barely a whisper. "Because success was all I had. And I thought, if I let myself love you, if I let myself need you, I'd lose focus. I'd become weak. I'd fail. So you chose not to love me at all." The accusation was devastating in its simplicity. "I chose wrong," Edward said, his voice breaking, "and I can't undo it. But Vicky, please believe me when I say it was never about you not being enough. You are perfect. You are brilliant and kind and everything I didn't know I needed. The failure was mine. Only mine." Vicky's lip trembled. "How do I know you won't leave again?" Because leaving you the first time almost killed me. And now that I know you, now that I've seen who you are, leaving would actually finish the job. But you didn't know me then, and you still left. Edward had no answer for that. Because she was right. Vicky looked between her parents, the mother who'd never given up, and the father who'd given up before she was born. I don't know if I can forgive you, she whispered. I'm not asking you to, Edward said. Not yet, maybe not ever. I'm just asking for the chance to show up, to be here, to prove that I can be better than the worst thing I've ever done. Vicky was quiet for a long time. Then, I need time. Take all the time you need. And I need you to understand something. Her voice was stronger now. You don't get to be my dad just because you want to. You have to earn it. Every single day. I know. And I'm going to be angry for a while. I'm going to be hurt. And you don't get to rush me through that. I won't. And Mom gets the final say. On everything. Because she's the one who's been here. Edward looked at Alicia, who stood frozen, watching this exchange with tears streaming down her face. Agreed, he said. Whatever your mother decides, I'll respect it. Vicky nodded slowly. Then she walked back to her room and closed the door. Edward and Alicia stood in the silence, the weight of what had just happened settling over them. She's incredible, Edward whispered. I know. You raised her right. I had to, Alicia said quietly. I was the only one there. The words weren't cruel, just true. And truth was the hardest thing to swallow. 3 weeks later, Vicky still wasn't speaking to Edward. But she hadn't blocked his number either. And she read every text he sent, even if she didn't respond. Good morning. I hope you have a great day at school. I saw an article about sustainable architecture you might like. No pressure to read it. Just thought of you. Your mom mentioned you're working on a new project. I'd love to hear about it someday. When you're ready. Alicia watched her daughter's face soften slightly with each message. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't rage anymore either. It was something in between, something fragile and uncertain and maybe, possibly, hopeful. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday. Aurora STEM Academy Annual Scholarship Gala, featuring keynote address by Edward Lamb and remarks from first-year scholarship recipients. Vicky held the embossed card in her hands, her heart racing. They want me to speak, she said quietly. Alicia looked up from her laptop. Do you want to? I don't know. They want me to talk about what the scholarship means to me. About opportunity and gratitude. And, she trailed off. About Mr. Lamb. The name still caught in her throat. Not my father, not Edward, just Mr. Lamb. You don't have to go, Alicia said. But what if I want to? Alicia set down her work. Then we'll figure out what you want to say. Vicky was quiet for a moment. Then, what if I told the truth? Which truth? All of it. That he's my father, that he left, that he came back. That I don't know if I can forgive him, but I'm trying. Alicia's breath caught. Baby, that's a very public way to. I'm tired of secrets, Mom. I'm tired of pretending he's just some nice billionaire who felt sorry for us. People should know the truth. And you think you're ready for that? Vicky looked at her mother with eyes far older than 12. No, but I don't think I'll ever be ready. So maybe I should just do it anyway. What Vicky didn't know was that 3 reporters in town for the gala had received an anonymous tip that morning. Edward Lamb's scholarship recipient is actually his secret daughter. He abandoned her mother 13 years ago. The whole thing is damage control. The source was untraceable, but the reporters were already digging. And they'd be in the audience tonight, waiting to confirm the story. Dawn Mercer watched from her new apartment across the city, a glass of wine in hand, wondering if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her career. Or the smartest move. The ballroom was packed. 500 people in evening wear, tech executives, education administrators, wealthy donors who liked seeing their money do visible good. And at the center of it all, Edward Lamb stood backstage, straightening his tie for the 15th time. He'd given hundreds of speeches, commanded boardrooms, negotiated billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat. But tonight, his hands were shaking. Because Vicky was speaking, and he had no idea what she was going to say. The program began with the usual formalities. Welcome remarks. A video about Aurora Academy's impact. Applause for generous donors. Then Edward took the stage. Good evening. When I created this scholarship fund 3 months ago, I thought I was doing something altruistic, something generous, something that would help young people who deserved a chance. He paused, his eyes finding Alicia in the third row. But the truth is, I was trying to fix something broken in myself. Trying to make up for a choice I made 15 years ago, that I've regretted every day since. The room went silent. This wasn't the rehearsed speech. I'm not here tonight to tell you I'm a hero. I'm here to introduce you to someone who is. He gestured to the wings. Vicki Hendricks. Vicki walked onto the stage in a simple navy dress, her hands clutching note cards she'd written and rewritten 17 times. She stood at the microphone, looking out at 500 faces. And for a moment, she couldn't breathe. Then she found her mother, and somehow, that was enough. "My name is Vicki Hendricks," she began, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "And I'm 12 years old. 3 months ago, my mom and I were evicted from our apartment. Everything we owned ended up on the street, and I filmed it because I was desperate, and I didn't know what else to do." She paused. "That video changed my life. It brought me here. It gave me opportunities I never dreamed of, and it brought me face to face with someone I'd been missing my entire life without knowing it." Reporters in the audience leaned forward, cameras ready. "Mr. Lamb isn't just my scholarship benefactor," Vicki's voice cracked slightly. "He's my father." Gasps rippled through the room. Cameras flashed. Edward stood frozen in the wings, tears already streaming down his face. "He's the man who walked away from my mother when she was pregnant. The man who offered her money to make me disappear. The man who chose his company over his family." The room was silent, except for the sound of reporters typing frantically. "For 12 years, I didn't know who he was. And when I found out 3 weeks ago, I hated him. I hated him for leaving. I hated him for not being there. I hated him for making me feel like I wasn't enough." Her voice broke. "But here's what I'm learning. Hate takes more energy than I have to give, and anger won't change the past." She set down her note cards. What came next wasn't written. "I don't know if my dad is a good person. I don't know if he's changed. I don't know if the man standing backstage is the same man who told my mother to disappear." She looked directly at Edward. "But I do know this. For 12 years, I thought something was wrong with me, that I wasn't enough for him to stay, but I was always enough. He just wasn't ready to be what I needed." She paused, letting the words settle. The quotable moment, the truth that would be shared a million times. He showed up too late, but he showed up, and every day since, he's kept showing up. Even when I ignored his calls, even when I deleted his texts, even when I told him I wished he'd stayed away. Tears fell freely now. "I don't know if I'll ever call him dad without it feeling strange. I don't know if we'll ever have what other fathers and daughters have, and I don't know if he deserves forgiveness." She took a shaky breath. "But I do know that people are more than the worst thing they've ever done. And if I've learned anything from my mom, it's that love isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up, even when it's hard, even when you're scared, even when you don't deserve it." She looked out at the audience. "So here's what I want you to know. This scholarship isn't charity. It's my father trying to do better, trying to be better. And maybe that's all any of us can do, try to be better than we were yesterday." Vicki's voice softened. "Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for believing in me. And thank you for letting me tell you the truth." She stepped back from the microphone. For 3 long seconds, the room was utterly silent. Then someone started clapping. Then another. Then the entire ballroom rose in a standing ovation. Edward walked onto the stage, tears streaming openly down his face. He didn't care who saw. Didn't care about the cameras or the reporters or his reputation. He only saw his daughter. Vicki stood there, uncertain, vulnerable, impossibly brave. And for the first time in her life, she let him hug her. Not for long, just a moment. But it was enough. When they separated, Vicki looked up at him with red-rimmed eyes. "I'm still mad at you," she whispered. "I know. And this doesn't fix anything. I know. But," she hesitated, "maybe we can figure it out, eventually." Edward's voice broke. "I'd like that. Very much." Vicki nodded. Then she walked off stage to where Alicia sat 3 rows back, tears streaming down her face. Not tears of pain this time. Hope. Backstage, Edward found Alicia and Vicki in the green room. That was... he couldn't find words. "Honest," Alicia finished. "Brave," Edward added. Vicki shrugged. suddenly shy. It was true. The reporters are going to have a field day with this, Alicia said quietly. Let them. Edward sat down across from them. The truth is out now. No more secrets, no more hiding. Vicky looked between her parents. What happens now? Edward and Alicia exchanged a glance. Now? Alicia said carefully. Now we figure it out. Day by day. No grand promises, no perfect plans, just showing up. That's it? Vicky asked. That's everything, Edward said. And somehow, sitting in that green room with the chaos of the gala continuing outside, the three of them began to believe it might be true. If you're still here, you understand something most people don't. Forgiveness isn't about the person who hurt you. It's about the person you become when you decide whether to carry that weight forever or set it down. Vicky just made her choice, and it wasn't easy, and it wasn't clean, and it wasn't perfect. But it was hers. Like this video if you believe people can change. Comment and tell me about someone who showed up late, but showed up anyway. And subscribe, because this story isn't over yet. We're about to see what happens when broken people try to build something new. The headline appeared everywhere. Billionaire CEO's secret daughter speaks out. A story of abandonment, forgiveness, and second chances. But for once, Edward didn't care about the headlines, because Vicky had texted him that morning, "Science fair today at 2 p.m., if you're free." If he was free, he'd canceled 3 board meetings for this. 3 months after the gala, the media frenzy had finally died down. But the story remained. The billionaire who'd abandoned his daughter, the mother who'd raised her alone, and the girl who'd chosen grace over revenge. It was messy. It was complicated. And it was theirs. Edward stood in the school gymnasium, watching Vicky explain her disaster relief water filtration prototype to a panel of judges. She was 13 now, taller, more confident, still brilliant, still kind, still everything he'd almost missed. Alicia stood beside him, arms crossed, protective as always. "She's good," Edward said quietly. "She's always been good. You're just finally here to see it." The words weren't cruel anymore, just true. And truth had become the foundation they built on. The judges asked their final question. "Miss Hendricks, who inspired this project?" Vicky glanced at the audience, found Alicia first, then Edward. "My mom inspired it," she said clearly. "She taught me that helping people matters more than anything. That you show up even when it's hard. That you don't give up on people who need you." She paused. "And my dad taught me that it's never too late to become the person you should have been. That mistakes don't define you, what you do after them does." Edward's vision blurred. In the audience, Alicia reached over and squeezed his hand. Not romantic. Not forgiveness for what he'd done, but acknowledgement of what he'd become. Vicky's team won second place. She was disappointed for exactly 4 minutes. Then she spotted Edward and Alicia waiting by the doors. She ran to them. Not to Edward specifically, not to Alicia separately. To both of them, to her family. "I know why we didn't win," she said, already problem-solving. "The filtration rate was perfect," Edward interrupted. "You were perfect. Second place isn't perfect." "No," Alicia said, pulling her close. "But we are, right here, the three of us. This is perfect." Vicky looked between them, the mother who'd never given up and the father who'd almost given up everything. "Yeah," she said softly. "I guess it is." 6 months later, on a Saturday afternoon, they walked through the park together. Not planned, not scheduled, just a spontaneous decision to be together. Vicky was working on a new version of her water filtration system, this time focused on communities without clean water access. Edward had committed $5 million to fund pilot programs. Alicia had enrolled in graduate school for social work, finally pursuing the degree she'd abandoned 15 years ago. They were all building something new from broken pieces. "Dad," Vicky said as they walked. Edward's heart still skipped when she called him that. She'd started using it 2 months ago, tentatively at first, then more naturally. "Yeah? I was thinking, for the summer pilot program, maybe we could go together to help install the first systems?" Edward stopped walking. "You want me to come? Well, you're funding it." And, she shrugged, "I think you should see what your money actually does. Not just on paper." "I'd love that." Vicky smiled. Then she reached out and took his hand. It was the first time she'd done that voluntarily. And Edward thought his heart might explode. from the simple, devastating beauty of it. Later, when Vicky had run ahead to watch a street performer, Alicia and Edward walked in comfortable silence. "Thank you," Edward said quietly. "For what?" "For letting me try. For not shutting me out. For giving me a chance I didn't deserve." Alicia was quiet for a moment. Then, "I didn't do it for you. I know. I did it for her. Because she deserved to know her father, even if he was late. I know that too." They watched Vicky laugh at the performer's juggling act, her face bright with joy. "Do you regret it?" Edward asked. "Keeping her? Raising her alone?" Alicia didn't hesitate. Never. Not for a single second. Even though it was hard? Especially because it was hard. The hard things are what made her who she is. And she's perfect. Edward nodded. She is. They stood there, two people who'd loved each other once and destroyed each other twice, watching the daughter they'd made together become someone neither of them could have created alone. "We did all right, didn't we?" Edward said softly. "You don't get to use we yet," Alicia said, "but there was no venom in it. You've only been here a year. Fair. But," she paused, "you're doing better than I expected. That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me in 15 years. Alicia smiled despite herself. "Don't get used to it." Vicky ran back to them, breathless and happy. "Can we get ice cream?" "It's 4 p.m., Alicia said. So dinner is in 2 hours. Mom, it's Saturday. And it's ice cream." Alicia looked at Edward. "Did you teach her to negotiate like this?" "That's all you," Edward said. "She's been arguing circles around people since she could talk." "Fine, ice cream, but you're eating your vegetables at dinner. Deal." They walked toward the ice cream shop, Vicky between them, chattering about her project and her plans and her dreams. And Edward realized something that made his chest ache. This was what he'd been building toward his entire life. Not empires, not billions, not power. This moment, this family, this imperfect, messy, beautiful thing they were creating from the ruins of his worst mistake. "Edward?" Alicia's voice pulled him from his thoughts. "Yeah? You're crying." He touched his face. She was right. "Sorry, He looked at Vicky, then at Alicia. "I can't believe I almost missed this." "Missed what?" "This. All of it. Her. You. This life we're building." Alicia's expression softened. "You did miss it. For 12 years. I know. But you're here now. I am. So stop crying about what you lost and start appreciating what you have." Edward laughed, wiping his eyes. "That's the second nice thing you've said to me. Don't push your luck." Vicky looked up at them, confused. "Are you two fighting or flirting?" "I can never tell." "Neither can we," Alicia said. And for the first time in 15 years, all three of them laughed together. That night, after Vicky had gone to bed, Edward sat in his car outside their apartment building, looking up at the lit window where his daughter slept. His phone buzzed. A text from Alicia. "Thank you for showing up today. She appreciated it." Edward typed back, "I'll show up every day for the rest of my life if she'll let me." A pause. Then, "I think she might." Edward stared at the message, hope and grief warring in his chest. He'd spent 15 years building an empire, and it had taken losing everything to realize that empires don't keep you warm at night. They don't laugh at your jokes. They don't take your hand while walking through the park. They don't call you dad with hesitant hope in their voices. But family does. Even the family you almost destroyed. Even the family you're still learning how to deserve. He looked up at the window one more time. Then he started the car and drove home. Not to his daughter's home. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But that was okay. Because he was in her life now. And every day she let him show up was a gift he'd never take for granted. If you made it all the way here, you're not just watching a story. You're part of something bigger, a community that believes in second chances earned, not given. In forgiveness that costs something. In families that choose each other every day. Subscribe if you want more stories about women who survive, children who forgive, and people who find their way home against impossible odds. Like this video if these honest, emotional stories speak to you. You're not sentimental, you're wise. And you deserve stories that honor that wisdom. Share it with someone wrestling with forgiveness. Someone wondering if it's too late. Someone who needs to know that showing up matters more than being perfect. Comment below. Have you ever given someone a second chance? Did they earn it? Your story matters. I read every single one. This channel exists because you show up. And I promise I'll keep showing up too. Now go hug someone you love. And remember, it's never too late to come home.